Technology has made civilized life significantly more comfortable for human society. From the discovery of electricity and the use of different natural resources, humankind has produced many products. However, some products have been engineered with such complexity that when misused, they can cause severe injury, environmental impacts, and even cost lives. So why are there so many technological disasters in human history? What is the common denominator? The HBO Miniseries Chernobyl is one of many productions and documentaries that provides answers to these questions, and is the series we are reviewing. Welcome to a special edition of the Life Lessons series. The HBO miniseries Chernobyl is a 5-episode production that references the history of the disaster regarding the explosion of nuclear reactor number 4. It was compiled based on the testimonies, official documents, and other accounts from 1986 and the following years. The miniseries was written by Craig Mazin and directed by Johan Rink. If you have not seen this series, I recommend that you do so before continuing this Life Lessons installment. Throughout the other productions related to this accident, this series appears to contain significant details from the decisions leading to the pinnacle of the disaster to the cleanup involved. Some of you may be asking what else could possibly be learned about this historical accident that can help us to avoid problems that are nowhere near the scale of what happened back then. That's a great question. One of the leading causes of critical equipment failure, if not at the very top, is human error. In many technological disasters, we often hear this term used with a specific naming convention related to the occupation of the industry, such as operator error. However, this ranking alone is not the sole cause of critical failures. Human error can extend all the way to the highest positions in all chains of command. But yet it's often those in lower rankings where the blame is focused. By the opening narration in the documentary series Seconds from Disaster, the statement says, quote, "Disasters don't just happen. They are triggered by a chain of critical events," close quote. Therefore, in order to get to the bottom of any issue, we must examine all facts and persons involved from top to bottom. In summary of this miniseries, Reactor Unit 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in 1986 was undergoing a safety test. The test was to determine the ability of the steam turbine coasting down its revolutions per minute in the event of a power failure, and determine if its free spin would possess enough mechanical energy to drive the power generator in order to sustain the water pumps that cool the reactor core. The theory argued that the coasting turbine would bridge the 1-minute gap for the diesel engine generators to rev to the performance revolutions per minute, which would then take over and power the water pumps. The reason for this is because with nuclear fission reactors, even when the chain reaction is stopped, the nuclear fuel experiences what is known as heat decay, which means the fuel remains very hot for a period of time. Because of the significant amount of heat, lack of cooling would lead to the core overheating, which could then lead to a meltdown and restart the chain reaction. This would be catastrophic as the fuel would become a molten mass at around 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit and would burn through the metallic reactor vessel and concrete building and into groundwater, instantly superheating and contaminating it with ionizing radiation, rendering the groundwater unusable for all forms of life, to which it would spread throughout the land for hundreds if not thousands of miles. But why is ionizing radiation so dangerous? It's because the gamma rays can damage the DNA of living organisms, leading to cancer in less severe cases. In worse cases of severe exposure to ionizing radiation, the cells in the body break down while the individual is still alive and fully conscious until it can no longer sustain living. Therefore, this safety test was crucial. However, many things went wrong during preparations for the test. According to reports and testimonies, RBMK reactors at this time possessed major design flaws, causing them to become unstable at lower power levels. Many safety systems were disabled, and reactor force balance was way out of the guidelines by government regulations, workplace protocols, and within nature itself. The end result was two massive explosions, followed by a radioactive fallout, political misconduct, cleanup, and the worst nuclear disaster in human history. So what connections does this have that we can learn from? While the design and construction of technology may be complex, our general interaction with it is simple. Let's begin with episode 1 of the miniseries. Number 1. Always respect the truth and its authority. In the opening sequence of the first episode, Professor Valery Alexeyevich Legasov, the appointed physicist of the committee to investigate and contain the Chernobyl disaster, was trying his last efforts to relay the truth. He was demoted from his position and isolated in order to restrain the truth about the conditions of the former Soviets' RBMK reactors, which had design flaws, and the classified details ordered by government entities, which ultimately aided in the developments to the explosion. In addition, he was under constant surveillance by the Security Bureau to keep him in check. At the same time, this is as far as they could take it due to his credibility via his testimony in Vienna, where he testified to the world about what happened in Chernobyl following the explosion. With his health declining and guilt for not speaking the whole truth at first, Professor Legasov found himself distraught and wanting to make amends. In addition, with the understanding that his final move would likely attract additional retaliation by the Security Bureau, Professor Legasov, unfortunately, manually resigned from among the living. Humankind throughout history has displayed significant cases of integrity issues and a love-hate relationship with the truth. Those with these issues only love and respect the truth when they are the prevailing party thereof, regardless of what their motive is. This mindset is often referred to as delusion, and it's not concerned about whether it's right or wrong. It will lie, cheat, and steal to get its way. However, the truth sees this, and it will fulfill its purpose. To attempt to suppress the truth is to declare war against nature. There have been many, time and time again, that have lost such a war. Yet there are still more among humankind who refuse to accept this reality. The bottom line, we do not stand a chance in a fight against the truth. And those of us abiding by the truth can only keep ourselves clear from those who oppose it. So if you are in a toxic environment that opposes truth, make relocating to somewhere that abides by truth a top priority. No amount of suppression nor oppression will ever stop the truth from fulfilling its purpose. It always finds a way, influencing our conscience as one of its common avenues. And no matter how many you try to silence, it has many to choose from to carry out its purpose. Number 2, always investigate key witness testimonies. Following the major explosion, a plant worker reported to the control room that the reactor core exploded, and they witnessed it with their own eyes. However, instead of seeking to verify this detail, Deputy Chief Engineer Anatoly Dyatlov dismissed the statement and substituted it with his own theory as to what exploded, the control system tank. Although with numerous other testimonies and even viewing with his own eyes, material that is only found in the reactor core lying on the ground, he still refused to believe the core exploded. Power Station Director Viktor Brekhanov and Chief Engineer Nikolai Fomin also rejected eyewitness testimonies by their own staff, including Mr. Fomin asking how an RBMK reactor core explodes. Even though there were key signs the situation was worse than reported, such as people near the plant collapsing from dizziness and vomiting, which are key signs of acute radiation sickness, along with radiation burns on their skin, the coloration of air surrounding the building, and yet they maintained their denial. Whenever someone brings details of a situation they personally witnessed to our attention, the worst thing we can do is dismiss them without even investigating to confirm whether or not their statements possess validity. There are those of us who suffered events like this going back as far as our childhood. Even when reporting acts of disrespect, both by our peers and even adults, how many of us were met with dismissive, vindictive responses, addressing us as the one in the wrong, even though we were at ground zero and witnessed the whole event unfold? How traumatized did you become because of that? Even in the workplace, we share what a problem actually is, but in some cases, they are dismissed or we are just told to make do with it, and with little to no support. Responses like these are irresponsible and unhealthy. They develop distrust, erode respect, and perpetuate the harm those problems cause and will continue to inflict. Therefore, if you have been doing this to others, you may want to take a serious objective examination at your character. Make the necessary adjustments and then make amends as best as possible with those you damaged the trust with. If they no longer wish to be on speaking terms, that is something you must accept. That is one of the consequences for blatantly violating their trust. This also warrants another life lesson. Number 3, denial of the truth does not override its presence and reality. Power station workers Alex Akimov and Leonid Toptunov maintained the mindset to try to save the destroyed reactor from a meltdown. They made their way to the gate valve corridor, which are the water valves that send water to each fuel channel of the reactor, ranging up to 1,600 channels. The room was already flooded with water, which most likely was heavily contaminated with radiation. Even as they were opening the valves one by one, they conversed amongst each other about the aftermath. Unfortunately, they stayed in the corridor long enough to receive lethal doses of radiation. In the underground bunker near the power plant, top officials met to discuss their next courses of action after the explosion. Some questioned the validity of the report after viewing the damage and the following effects suffered by fellow plant workers and firefighters. However, an individual of senior age interjected and encouraged them to stay confident, close the borders so that no one leaves, and to cut the phone lines so as not to spread, quote, misinformation, end quote. There comes a point where truth and reality can no longer be denied, and the evidence is abundantly clear and self-proven, beyond reasonable doubt. I'm going to ask a few questions with unfiltered language. What the hell has happened to us as human beings that we have allowed ourselves to believe we can deny the truth without consequence? Who the hell do we think we are in our unjustifiable, blatant arrogance to believe we have any right to silence the truth itself, and also those who share the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Who the hell do we think we are to jeopardize other people's safety, including their sanity, for the sake of our own reputation? The answer is simple. We have allowed ourselves to become dysfunctional, aided by our own foolishness, and then be proud of our dysfunction, simply because we make the simple excuse that we are human. We have become solely complacent with human evolution and the development of our talents, and we pay little to no attention whatsoever to the development of our discipline and integrity with those talents, deceiving ourselves that discipline and integrity are obsolete. The simple issue is we find discipline, integrity, and ultimately accountability as offensive. And then we start a war with these concepts in foolish attempts to silence them, only to accomplish one temporary thing: delaying the inevitable. Delay of the inevitable is not eternal. And when that due date finally arrives, it will collect its dues, interest included. If we do something to screw up ourselves and/or our environment, that is our fault. The more we deny the truth, we only add more problems to those we already have. Human nature is not and will not ever be a valid excuse for this. Number 4, personal and organizational policies have little to no significance when they are based on ignorance and arrogance, and they put innocent lives at risk. Boris Shcherbina, Deputy Chairman of the Council of Ministers and head of the Bureau for Fuel and Energy, contacted Professor Legasov and informed he was appointed to participate in the committee to manage the accident. As Professor Legasov asked technical questions involving the accident, the information he received concerned him. He attempted to advise an evacuation, but was interrupted by Mr. Shcherbina and warned not to discuss policy while on the committee, and only answer questions related to the functions of RBMK reactors if they were even mentioned. While it is understood that in most cases, management personnel are not fully aware of all the technical aspects of the applications they supervise, that does not nullify the accountability for their authority, nor their actions. They are still responsible for what happens, and they signed up for that responsibility. Furthermore, it does not excuse rude behavior. The blatant disregard to concerns by the most competent personnel on a team is inexcusable. Furthermore, management officials are only putting themselves at a disadvantage by doing that. Making tough decisions is severely questionable, if not heavily alienated and invalidated, when those decisions are based on deliberate arrogance within that ignorance. It is disrespectful and discouraging to appoint someone to be nothing more than a biological dictionary, and then have to sit through meetings to where they know the end result of the planning is disaster. Then, when the competent tell authority figures the truth, even with significant proof, or even the motivational factors to seek proof, the competent are shunned for allegedly acting out of line with policy or authority. But yet, those same types of management have no problem sacrificing the health of others, their safety and sanity to sustain their own. What's worse, if you remain silent and the scenario blows up in the faces of the management authorities, those same authority figures are quick to demand answers from the competent. If we as a human society are going to grow in maturity and integrity, this arrogance, at times with ignorance and overall delusion, has to stop. Our greatest enemy is not each other. It's actually ourselves, our own ego. That'll complete this installment of the series, and I invite you to stay tuned for the next one. Are there lessons you learned in this episode of Chernobyl? By all means, please share them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and haven't done so already, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also be sure to activate notifications to be informed of the next upload. Life is full of lessons. Although we might not be perfect, we are capable of improvement. So until next time, stay wise and maintain commitment to personal development.